What is going on, Headliner Nation? Jake and Dr. Ethan Turner back for Week 8 injury reports. In other words, a show which we talk about almost every running back in the NFL, Ethan, because at this point, is anyone healthy? It's getting long again, and people are starting to get a little bit worried about their fantasy football lineups.
Yeah, this is getting pretty bad. Everyone's hurt, but we're only
hurt.
midway through the season. So, of course, everyone's hurt. This is the NFL. This is how it works. That's why we're here. That's why we have this show. That's why you brought me onto the team, because we knew that this was going to happen.
That's right. Unfortunately, it's happened way too quick for a lot of people, and we need to start off the show with a customary moment of silence, Ethan. We had another fallen soldier this past weekend, so I'll leave it to you to lead this moment of silence here this week.
Yeah, sadly, it is another moment of silence. This time, Odell Beckham Jr., torn ACL, done for the year. I really struggle when I see a player that I know is incredibly talented deal with now consistently getting hurt every single season. Since OBJ broke his ankle, this has been a trend. Obviously, an ACL tear is a major issue. This is really going to hurt his dynasty stock. And it just sucks. It sucks to have to deal with this type of stuff. It seems like this year especially, we are seeing so many major players getting just season-ending injuries. It's just – I've never seen anything like this in my 3+ years of talking about NFL injuries. I've never seen this many star players hurt for this long. So we're hoping we can start getting some of these guys back. But obviously with OBJ, it's over for the year. He is droppable.
That's sad. But I do have a question for you to piggyback off of this. And I asked it in my quarterback video here earlier in the week. Is Baker Mayfield better without Odell Beckham?
Did you see where Baker actually snapped back at a question? He got this same question, and he was like, yo, that's not cool to talk about. He literally just tore his ACL. It's a little bit different when you're asking me. I'm not going to be quite as offended.
No.
I think the numbers are interesting. I think the offense as a whole is probably going to be worse. Baker might have to throw more because of that, because they probably aren't going to be as good. They might be playing from behind more. So he's not going to be able to run up the score. And so yes and no. We do tend to find that quarterbacks do tend to do better without their wide receiver one. And that's not for everyone, but Aaron Rodgers has a lot of great games without Devonta Adams. So it's not like it's uncommon to see something like this happen. Again, the fact that you're losing a major piece of offense should bump up a few guys, but it's also going to hurt the offense as a whole, just because you're not going to have defenses scheming for an all-star player like an Odell Beckham Jr.
Yep, that's kind of what's my thought too. I was just, hey, he's not force feeding Odell ever. He can actually, spread it around to maybe some guys who defenses really aren't focusing on. It was just a quick question. How to get your opinion, Ethan? Just wanted to throw it out there to you. Just give you a little softball.
All right, it's fine.
Plus, I was trying to ease it in a little bit because we got a lot of injuries to talk about. So we figure talk about something positive before all the negative. And the first negative we're going to be talking about is going to be Chris Godwin. Got some bad news on Godwin this week, didn't we?
We did. He actually has a fractured index finger. He had surgery to fixate the fracture. So basically they went in and made sure that the fracture was stable so that it'll heal correctly. Typically a fracture takes about 4 to 6 weeks to heal, for the bone to heal. But the team says that Godwin could be back as soon as next week. I'm not really buying that, but it is a good sign that they think he will be back faster than that. He is for sure out this week though, so just plan accordingly. I guess Mike Evans, it seems like anytime Chris Godwin's out, Mike Evans seems to be the one that's getting the majority of the touches. So I think Mike Evans is definitely playable this week. And Scotty Miller and
Gronk.
We're almost there, man. The return of Antonio Brown. We'll see what happens now that Chris Godwin is out, where Antonio Brown fits into all this. So definitely an interesting team to watch. I'm curious to see, like I said, I don't expect Chris Godwin back next week, so I'm curious to see how they bring in Antonio Brown into this wide receiver core.
Yeah, it's definitely going to be something interesting to watch for sure. What about Kenyan Drake? A lot of people hate Kenyan Drake. They were off the Drake bandwagon a few weeks ago because of the underperforming, and that's kind of weird to see. If you actually go back and look at the numbers, he was third in the NFL in rushing yards. A lot of people, yeah, sure, it was a bulk of it was in one game, but so was CEH's, and he's right there, in front of him. So It's kind of one of those things where he wasn't finding the end zone, wasn't involved in the passing game, but now he's hurt, and people don't have to worry about it on a weekly basis anymore.
Sadly, that's the truth. So he's got a high ankle sprain. He's expected to miss multiple weeks. Usually return to play is about 3 to 6 weeks with a high ankle sprain, but it does vary case by case. Chase Edmonds is going to be a bell cow for the immediate future. Hopefully you picked him up this week. He's definitely somebody that needs to be rostered all the way across the board. Chase Edmonds, there was a lot of talk about him actually being earning more carries. I think he had a 6.1 yards per carry going into last week, and he continues to produce when you give him touches. So I'm very curious to see how he does when he has no competition. Don't forget that Chase Edmonds last year had an overall RB1 week in fantasy. So he has that in his repertoire. He is definitely a locked in RB2 with definite RB1 upside, I think.
Yeah, he's just one of those guys that we need to see now this year. He's kind of excelled in the passing game. He's gotten a lot of the gravy opportunities that Drake had last year. Now let's see what he does with the majority of a 3-down role there in Arizona. But what about another division rival there for Arizona? The Seattle Seahawks have what you would call a busted up backfield because everybody hurt for the most part in Seattle. What about Chris Carson and Carlos Hyde?
Chris Carson actually left the game early with a mid-foot sprain, otherwise known as a mild Lisfranc injury. It sounds better when you say mid-foot sprain, but a Lisfranc injury is basically just a mid-foot sprain. So let's just call a spade here. He is week to week, Carson is, and I do expect him to miss this week at a minimum, potentially even next week. His replacement, Carlos Hyde, actually left the game too with hamstring soreness. So both of these guys are banged up. I think Hyde is more likely to play this week, but if he doesn't, with Travis Homer, the third string running back, also missing practice with injury, it could be a chance for DJ Dallas, the rookie, to make a splash. He could definitely come in and show what he's worth. This is a big opportunity for DJ Dallas, regardless of what happens, because I think he's operating at a minimum as the RB2 on the team.
Yeah, he's definitely somebody a lot of people probably picked up off their waiver wire this week. Just, hey, we don't know who else it's going to be. He may not have a choice but to go out there and get some decent volume. Now, obviously, the Thursday night game is over already. There was no Christian McCaffrey, but we need to update people on CMC. When could we see him back here pretty soon?
So I have to be honest with you, Jake. Last week, I screwed up. I messed up. I got obliterated for it in the comments. Let's just put it out there. I am sorry about the mix-up in last week's video where I said CMC was eyeing a week 10 return. I wrote it down in my notes wrong. I meant week 9, but I wrote week 10. So that's on me. That's my fault. If you're upset about that in the comments, I accept apologies just like anybody else. CMC has returned to practicing. He was not able to make his debut this week, with the game being on Thursday. If the game had been on Sunday, I think we'd be having a different conversation. But with it being a Thursday game, they just didn't get enough practice time in to make sure that he's 100%. I do expect him to return in week 9, barring any setbacks with this ankle. And I think we can all agree that that is very good news.
Yeah, and then don't worry. Everybody makes mistakes. I mean, you just had yourself a Ron Burgundy moment, right? Like a teleprompter moment where you just read what was on the teleprompter.
Yeah, I made the notes. It's still my fault, but I definitely felt like everyone was pretty upset about it.
Now, people get upset quick these days. They have a fuse that's like this long, so it's okay. It happens. What about Miles Sanders? He's somebody who a lot of people desperately need back in their lineups, but not looking so good.
Sanders is dealing with a knee sprain. There's not really much out there as far as the severity of the injury or really a diagnosis. We don't know exactly what ligament is sprained, but we know that he's dealing with it. He has missed practice this week, and he hasn't practiced as of Thursday. So if he doesn't practice today, Friday, you can expect him to be ruled out this week. I don't expect Miles Sanders to play. Personally, I don't think he's going to make it back, which means we got another week of Boston Scott, which is not a bad thing. Boston Scott put up a very respectable game last week, so I'm not afraid to start Boston Scott if I need to.
Yeah, absolutely, especially against the Dallas Cowboys. I would start almost anybody against Dallas at this point. That's how bad they're playing. Allen Robinson. Let's go to a wide receiver here. What do we got on Allen Robinson?
This one was a little bit of a surprise to me. I didn't actually see this on Sunday, but Robinson is in the concussion protocol. He was diagnosed with a concussion. As of Thursday, he is still in the concussion protocol. So if he doesn't get cleared by Saturday, there's a pretty good chance that he misses this week. Concussions are really tricky because the player is really the only person who knows what they're feeling. They don't really, you can't really watch them on the sidelines and tell what they're feeling based on how they're running or moving with a concussion. So it really is do they practice? Do they not practice? And if they are practicing, is it a full practice, a limited practice? It's one you just got to kind of watch all the way up until game time. If it was based on what we're seeing, if he doesn't practice today, it's unlikely he's going to be cleared by Sunday, and you're probably going to be without him.
What about Aaron Jones of the Green Bay Packers? He's somebody, popped up late last week. Jamal Williams is more than a capable back in this offense. This offense looks great in Green Bay outside of just that 1 week against Tampa Bay. But Aaron Jones is somebody who's probably on the verge of potentially missing another week, right?
Very much so. Jones is dealing with a calf strain. He hasn't practiced as of Thursday. He injured his calf late last week. So this is not something where he's had almost 2 full weeks to get better. He's still at the 1 week mark. The team continues to roll along, so I think they give him plenty of time to rest. I don't expect a return this week. Jamal Williams is filling in nicely. I expect that to be the same this week. And so again, we're waiting on Aaron Jones, but just like with Devonta Adams, I would rather them be careful with Aaron Jones so that we have him later in the fantasy season than be upset because he misses an extra week right now.
Yeah, exactly. And we saw, like you said, with Devonta Adams, they were very patient with him and made sure that he was good to go before rushing him back to the game. Same thing, hopefully, here with Aaron Jones, even though it sucks in the meantime. What about our favorite guy? Let's talk about Joe Mixon for a second, because Joe Mixon obviously doesn't care about our videos, Ethan.
Yeah, Joe Mixon really hurt my feelings last week. He's dealing with a foot sprain, a bit of a surprise for me, honestly. Based on one of the reports that I was reading, what I thought watching the video, I thought he was going to play. I thought he was going to be good to go. Our video drops 30 minutes later. He gets ruled out for the week, which is just kind of awkward. I feel like I let people down. I definitely heard about it in the comments. I'm okay with that. Honestly, this happens. I don't think anybody's team was worse for the wear because he did get ruled out a full 2 days in advance. So you had a chance to see what happened and make a backup plan, which is always better, I think, than a game time decision. I expect Mixon to miss this week. The team does have a bye next week, and so there's no reason to rush him back. The team isn't necessarily playing for anything super important except for pride, and most of their offensive line is also hurt. So do you really want Joe Mixon coming back less than 100% behind an offensive line that is less than 100% and wasn't particularly good at 100%? I say no. Mixon's probably going to sit again.
Yeah, especially with the bye week coming up here, it makes a lot more sense. All right, so now we've gone through a few of the bigger names. It's time for our quick hitters, Ethan. We're going to rapid fire through some more names and get some quick updates on some guys. Maybe a little bit, I'm not going to say they're not big names, because there's a couple big names here we're going to touch on, but some just kind of to give people some updates. What about Jeff Wilson and Tevin Coleman in San Francisco?
Jeff Wilson's dealing with a high ankle sprain. He was placed on IR with this same injury that landed his teammate, Raheem Mostert, on IR last week. Now they've got another one with Jeff Wilson. Meanwhile, his other teammate, third running back, Tevin Coleman, was designated to return. I don't think that Coleman is back this week, but it's good to know that he is on track to get back sometime soon. And if he does miss, Jerick McKinnon becomes a solid flex play again, with JaMychal Hasty having some RB3 value. I think Hasty and McKinnon, we're kind of seeing what happens with McKinnon. The team is resting him because they used him more than they thought they would. It's very weird to me, but JaMychal Hasty, Jerick McKinnon are probably going to split the backfield this week. And honestly, I think just McKinnon's pass catching ability gives him a little bit of an edge as far as fantasy goes for me.
I mean, I'm all on that Hasty season right now. I'd like to see Hasty get a little bit of an opportunity there just because I like his name. But that's just me. I like weird things like that sometimes, Ethan. You know what I mean? I'm just, it's time. Let's give the kid a chance. What about their teammate though? Yeah, just give him a chance. What about their teammate Deebo Deebo Samuel not going to be playing this week, and I hate to see that against a great matchup against Seattle.
This is a bummer because I love Deebo Samuel. I love how he plays. He's still dealing with this hamstring strain. He is already been ruled out this week. Expect him to miss multiple weeks with this injury. And Jake, I hate to be that guy, but I was adamant to start this season that you don't want to draft players who have major injuries in the preseason. Sadly, this year it was Deebo. He had that foot injury. Now he's dealing with a hamstring strain. He's missed multiple games, and it's just kind of playing out the way I expected it to with Deebo. I don't have him on any rosters. I hope most of our listeners don't, because I was on this train well before the season started that Deebo was going to be a risky pick, and we're seeing it play out.
Yeah, hate to lose Deebo. What about Devonta Freeman in New York?
Freeman's dealing with an ankle sprain. He hasn't been practicing this week. I don't necessarily expect him to play. Wayne Gallman becomes an interesting low-cost running back option in DFS if Freeman does miss this week. But outside of that, you're not really looking at anybody here. I miss Saquon Barkley.
Yeah, me too. Like a lot. Even though he struggled at times to start the season, I'd still take Saquon over all the other options in New York right now. Absolutely. What about Andy Dalton? Is he okay?
He was listed with a concussion, but I was honestly worried that he got decapitated. He took a major, brutal, dirty hit. He's in concussion protocol somehow, still alive. That's great. If you haven't seen it, you should go watch it. It is pretty brutal. Don't expect him to play this week. He got knocked out cold, and rarely do the players come back in less than 7 days when you get knocked out like that.
Yeah, that was pretty vicious right there. What about Julian Edelman of the Patriots?
Edelman had actually had surgery to address a lingering issue he's been dealing with all season on his knee, and so he has already been ruled out this week. I don't expect him back next week. This team is looking pretty bad at 2-4. I just don't think they're really pushing Edelman to come back anytime soon. So Edelman's probably sitting, and he might be looking to the future of himself. So hard to say, but surgery, not looking like he's coming back anytime soon.
Yeah, and with the way that Cam is playing, it doesn't really matter. He doesn't involve him anyway. What about Mark Ingram in Baltimore?
Ingram hasn't practiced as of Thursday, and I'll be honest, generally kind of been a disappointment this season. I expect him to miss this week and potentially open up the door for Gus Edwards and hopefully J.K. Dobbins to get some more run. I want to see Dobbins on the field. They drafted him. Let the kid play. Stop rolling out Gus Edwards and luckily Mark Ingram. Well, I won't say luckily he's hurt. That's terrible. But luckily we're going to get a chance to see J.K. Dobbins with the larger role. That's what I want. As anyone can tell, I am a J.K. Dobbins stan. So I am excited about this one because I think it's going to give him a chance.
Yeah, that's one thing that we can hopefully see from this is maybe a little bit more J.K. Dobbins. Dalvin Cook, fingers crossed on Dalvin Cook.
Fingers, yeah, I would say like 90% crossed. He's been limited in practice. Remember, he's dealing with this groin strain that he suffered 3 weeks ago. There is a good chance he returns this week, but just kind of keep an eye on him heading into the game. Groin strains do have a tendency to flare up when they first return to full speed. So keep an eye on practice today, Friday, keep an eye on Saturday, and definitely pay attention Sunday morning because you never know with these groin strains. He could be ruled out right before the game starts. And if you're not paying attention, you're going to have him in your lineup and you're going to be hurting.
Yeah, and it's a great matchup. We've seen him put up big games against Green Bay. So if he's healthy, he's somebody you want in your lineup. Just got to have him healthy. Speaking of not being healthy, what about Michael Thomas?
Michael Thomas has really been a thorn in my side this year. He is dealing with a hamstring strain. Remember, this is a different injury than what he originally got hurt with. Then he got suspended. Now he's dealing with the hamstring strain. He has returned to a limited practice on Thursday, but if he isn't a full participant on Friday, I still think the team might be cautious with him and sit him. They don't have a whole lot of pressure to return. Obviously, their wide receiver core is hurting a little bit, but the team's pretty good. And so I'm not worried about Michael Thomas not returning this week, but he's on pace. Eventually we will see Michael Thomas again. And I'm not holding my breath for this week.
Yeah. Like you said, I mean, Drew Brees is still putting up solid numbers with lesser guys on the depth chart. Plus, there's always Alvin Kamara. This one hurts me. My spirit animal, the mustache himself, Gardner Minshew.
Gardner Minche is dealing with a small thumb fracture, actually multiple fractures, and a ligament strain in his throwing thumb. The team does have a bye this week, so you're not really worried about it for fantasy right now. But if you're relying on Minshew in 2 quarterback leagues, you need to take the time to look for a replacement this week, be a little bit ahead of the game, because just know that there's a good chance that he is not ready by next week. And so if you're relying on him, make your backup plans now, because nobody's really thinking about it because he is on bye.
Yeah, that's the biggest thing with the bye week here. Not a shock here. We got a couple pass catchers for the Philadelphia Eagles. What about Jalen Reagor and Dallas Goedert, or Goedert if you're feeling sexy?
Well, I'm always feeling sexy, Jake. Both of these guys were designated to return from IR, but Reagor has actually been cleared this week. He is ready to go early, which you love to see. Jalen Reagor coming back this week. I'm very excited to see how he now fits in with Travis Fulgham, who has been balling it up the last 3 weeks. Now we get to see Reagor in this offense. I don't expect that you see Deshaun Jackson, which means Reagor can slide into that role, which I think he was destined for anyway, and potentially put up some numbers this week. Again, probably not starting him, but I do think that I'm excited to see him play because I love this kid. Yeah. Dallas Goedert is still not quite there yet. I think he's close. With a bye week looming next week, the team could err on the side of caution with Goedert. There's no Zach Ertz, though. So if he does manage to play, and I would say there's still a probably 30% chance that happens. I'm not expecting it, but Zach Ertz is out. So if Goedert does play, he's a locked-in tight end 1, because nobody feeds a tight end like Carson Wentz, and Goedert is one of the best ones in the league. So if he's playing, you gotta slide him in there. There's very few teams that have a better option at tight end at this point in the season. But again, I don't expect him to be back necessarily this week.
I'm just excited I got you to say Goedert that many times, because, it just sounds official. You know what I mean? It sounds so much better than Goedert. But yeah, it's one of those things where if we can get him back on the field, that's great. My Scott Fishbowl team would absolutely love to have him back, because I have no other tight end at this point. But hey, some of these things we just got to be a little bit patient with. This is a very long list of injuries, and the list I thought was starting to shrink a little bit, and then now it's starting to grow a little bit. I can't keep up with your list, Ethan. Let's try to work on it for next week. Okay, let's work on a shorter list for next week. That's what the people want, is a shorter list from you, Ethan.
Well, here's the thing, Jake. We talked about Raheem Mostert being on my fantasy team in our Fantasy Headliners Dynasty League. Yep. Chris Carson was also on that team. Oh. So I'm now down to Malcolm Brown. And who knows? I think I get a start Jamal Williams with Malcolm Brown. But my running backs are completely devastated in this league. So just know those 2 guys are probably going to be hurt by next week. We should just put them on the list now.
You just add a premature add to the list. I just hope I play you this week. That's all.
You do play me this week, which is a shame, because if you look at it's the worst team that we play, because you got me on the best week, because 5 players that are starters for my team are either injured or on bye. So if I beat you this week, Jake, we are opening the injury show next week, with a celebration for me and a moment of silence for you.
Okay, well, I'll take that, because as of right now, I'm the best team in the league, so I would be upset. But hey, it is what it is, right? That was the Week 8 injury report. Still a lot of names to cover. We'll do our best to keep you updated. Do not forget, it's the NFL, and things change in the blink of an eye. We'll have the most up-to-date information we can give you guys on Saturday night during the live stream, so make sure you tune in for that before you make any final adjustments to your fantasy football rosters for Sunday. But for Ethan and myself, we appreciate the support. The channel continues to grow. Do us a favor, though. Hit the like button for us. That greatly helps us out here on YouTube. And if you enjoy all this type of content, consider subscribing, because we got you covered all year long. So hopefully you guys had a great week at work, school, whatever else you decided to do this week. We look forward to talking to you this weekend. Have a good one. Thank you.